Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Who Stuff Discuss podcast on the Who Stuff channel. Only 3 of us here today, the other 2 couldn't make it, but we've got me, the good Dalek, DW Sebling and Ollie Linklater. But today's episode is about historical stories, really our favourite historical stories. This doesn't just include pure historicals, really any episodes that are set in the past, so they can be episodes that are, got a big science fiction element, but they're set in the past. We've all picked 3. We're going to go around and do one each and then do another one each and so on. So my first one is the Aztecs. This actually is a pure historical, but I think it's a very good one. I think it's a pure historical done right because it doesn't really need any science fiction element apart from the TARDIS crew. It kind of feels like a sort of a period drama, but just with Doctor Who slotted in. But it really works because it's just them in that historical setting, and the sort of the drama and the plot of the story is based around the historical elements, and it's not just a background thing. And I think that's very good for this episode, because it manages to make a very interesting story just with that. And the sets are great. I love Barbara gets some good sort of development and time in this episode. I just think it's a very good, nice little short and sweet historical episode. It's really fun, and I really like it.
Cool. So my first story is also a William Hartnell story. A bit later on in his era, though, it's the Gunfighters. And now, to me, this story is very underrated. I think I first watched it when it came out on DVD. In that weird box set I think it was part of. But I rewatched it about a month ago now, and I love this story. I forgot how just fun it is. It's got a mixture of all sort of things. It's very comical in some places. It's very light-hearted, but that's not a bad thing at all. I think Dodo and Stephen, I love a bit of Dodo, so yeah, she's my guilty pleasure companion, if that's a thing. It's just such a fun story, and William Hartnell is on top form, and it's just a really fun romp, and the sets are great too, and everything about it is just very enjoyable and quite innocent. So that's my first story.
My first choice would probably be the Timerary, obviously the first Sontaran story, and Elizabeth Sladen's first story. I think it's just really fun, to be honest. The side characters are great. I love the whole premise of Sontaran crashing in the past and using old ruries and advancing them with guns and stuff. Elizabeth Sladen's great and gets off brilliantly with John Pertwee, and I just think they work together brilliantly, and overall it's just a really fun story in my opinion.
I'm going to have to give a sort of honourable mention to the Time Warrior because I do agree with Ollie, it's really good. But it would be part of my 3, but just for variety's sake I decided to not put it in because I knew Ollie was picking it. But it is very good, and instead for my sort of 70s slot, I'm going to go with The Mask of Mandragora, one that I just very recently watched, which is probably why, because it's sort of very fresh in my mind. But it's a real hidden gem story for me, I think, because it doesn't really get talked about much. I think it's because it's in season 14, it sort of gets overshadowed because season 14 is a very popular season and a brilliant season in my opinion. And just because there are so many really, really good and sort of fan favourite stories, and some stories that are definitely even better than this one, but because they are in the season it does get sort of overshadowed just being at the start. But I think it is a great story to kick off the season. The historical setting for it really works, but the sci-fi elements fit into it nicely. There's a great villain. There's a lot going on. It's a very exciting story. Lots of action. I really like the location work in it. Part 1 is very good because a lot of it is quite different to the rest of the story, and it's a great opener for the story and the season as a whole, really, because the first scene of them walking through and you get a introduction to the new console, seeing it for the first time, and you've got little references like John Pertwee's costume being there, and and then all the weird Mandragora Helix stuff, which leads into the main sort of plot of the story. I just think it's brilliant, and yeah, definitely a very underrated one in my opinion.
Cool. So my second one, well, my second and third one are both from New Who, which is quite surprising considering I'm a bit of a classic build. But we're going into season 4, or series 4, should I say, to Unicorn and the Wasp. Now, this was one of the first stories I probably ever watched. Not when it first was broadcast, but like one of the first David Tennants I watched. And I just remember enjoying it so much. I'm a big Agatha Christie fan as it is, so to see her in Doctor Who, well, not actually her, but to see the character of Agatha Christie in Doctor Who is just brilliant, and it's my sort of story, you know. It's got a little bit of alien in it, and a murder mystery. I mean, I love murder mystery stories, which they're just so fun, aren't they? Because obviously the first time that you watch it is very different to, you know, whenever you watch it again. But this story is just so cool. The Doctor and Donna, brilliant in it. Even though I'm not the biggest Donna fan, like Ollie. But I think she's great in this. And
that's changed, actually.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, yeah, fair enough. But yeah, it's just such a cool story, and I can't really say much about it other than that it's great and a bit light-hearted as well. So there you go.
Another classic story, probably one of my favourite episodes of all time, The Curse of Fenrik. I watched this episode probably about March now, and I heard good things about it, and it didn't disappoint. It was fantastic. I really liked Sylvester and Sophie Aldred. They're brilliant as always. They can pretty much carry any script, good or bad. The Hemivores were quite cool. I wonder if they could somehow come back. That might be interesting. And the whole thing with Seven's more manipulative side to Ace throughout season 26 being this was quite good, with the whole baby being the mother thing. Thought that was quite cool. Overall, just a really solid story, and I really like it.
For my final story, I'm jumping to New Who now for Vincent and the Doctor. A story which I absolutely love. One of my favourite Matt Smith stories, and one of my favourite stories ever, really. I really like doing art, so, you know, it's interesting to have a very famous artist in a Doctor Who story. That's just one of the reasons why I really like it, and I think Vincent van Gogh is played really well in this episode, and it's quite a different episode, especially for the series, but it works really well. Mental health themes, because I think it does those themes and messages just perfectly in this episode. It's not on the nose, it's done very well, and the scene at the end is, of course, just absolutely beautiful when he shows the gallery and how his artwork has, you know, it's just, I really love it, and yeah, it's just a beautiful episode, and I can't really fault it in any way.
Cool. So, before I mention my final story, I would just like to get out some honourable mentions. Anyone who's watched my top 10 classic stories of all time knows that Curse of Fenrik is my number 1. However, it's not on this list because Ollie chose it, but I think he summed it up perfectly. The Aztecs, another brilliant story. Vincent and the Doctor was actually my third pick, so I'm going to improvise now and skip to series 1 for The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances, which is might be my favourite series 1 episode. Or two-parter, but I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's obviously set in World War II, and it's so horrifying. I think it is definitely one of my the scariest stories in my opinion. Especially, I mean, the empty child, and the what do you call them? Gas mask zombie things. Yeah, they're just terrifying, and it's just a brilliant story. And I think I showed this to my girlfriend who's never watched Doctor Who before, and she is very intrigued. So that's why it's on the list, and those are my top 3 stories. So there you go.
Completely forgot Vincent and the Doctor existed, so if it wasn't for my choice, I probably would have picked that, but hey-ho. But for my third choice, I'm going to with the Series 3 two-parter, Human Nature and Family of Blood. Series 3 for me is incredibly underrated, and this two-parter, I mean, it gets praise, I know, but it was a story I never used to like. I used to really dislike Series 3. But it's definitely a highlight of it, and I just really like it. I haven't read the original novel of it, but I might see if I can at some point, because it'd be interesting to see how it was originally intended. But the Family of Blood are a really interesting concept, and I feel it also, the Fobwatch thing's quite cool too, and it also sets up Utopia really nicely. And Martha is just fantastic in it, and that's why I really like it.
Yeah, there are some. That's another great one. To be honest, I didn't really think about how many historicals there were, but when I came to do this, there are so many to choose from, and there's so many I would have liked to included. To be honest, any of the ones that all three of us said, I would totally agree with. But yeah, that is just about wrapping it up for this video. I hope you have enjoyed. Leave a like if you have, and subscribe and turn on post notifications if you're new to the channel. Thank you very much for watching. We will hopefully have a new video next Friday. We have been a bit dodgy with the upload schedule at the moment, but we're hopefully getting back on track. So just bear with us, and stay tuned for more videos and more episodes of the podcast. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.